This is Hello Healthy, a Dignity Health podcast. Here's Bill Klaproth.
This is a difficult time for everyone, but especially for children who are, for the majority, out of school due to the virus, as well as potentially picking up anxiety from the people around them. So what can parents do to help manage their children's stress? Let's find out with Grace Wilhelm, a child life specialist at Dignity Health. Grace, thanks so much for your time. So what kind of effect does a situation like this have on children?
Well, when we think about COVID-19, we can think about our own reaction as adults and how that can be manifested in a lot of different ways, right? We see a lot of people panicking. We can see a lot of stress, a lot of worry, a lot of concern, and just fear of the unknown. And a lot of those things can, of course, be manifested in children. They already have their own limits on what kind of information they can find out on their own. And just seeing stress and fear and just change in adults as well can be another contributing factor to all of that. But also when we think about just kids in stressful situations as well, sometimes kids are a lot more information seeking. Some like to not do the fight or flight. They just want to freeze, and they're not maybe expressing themselves in really obvious and clear ways. Maybe they're just kind of going along. If maybe they're younger and they aren't having too many disruptions in their routine in their home, maybe with a parent who stays at home already with them, they're not having a lot of change in their routine. So maybe they might be picking up more on the stress or kind of the anxiety of the adults in the home. Maybe they're missing out on a lot of socialization with other friends, with kind of peers, with just being around a lot of people. That can have a lot of stress on kids as well. Just that disruption in their routine, that alone can be something that can be really impactful and make a big impact on children and just how they're responding to that stress as well.
Right. Children are always listening and watching. So if you're showing anxiety, if you're stressed out, if you're on edge, if you're talking about things in a way that are stressful and doom and gloom, kids pick up on that. So how can parents alleviate that? I
think one thing that some parents don't want to address is they think that if I mention it, it's going to be this big, confusing or frightening thing. But if parents mention or bring up their own reaction, their own thoughts and feelings, that can be really comforting for kids to know that I'm not, for one, they're not the only ones feeling that way, but also that these adults around them can be experiencing some of the same emotions as well. And because of that, they can learn from them and kind of teach them, well, this is what I do when I'm feeling stressed or worried. When I want to know information, this is who I can go to. Or maybe I realized today I was looking way too much at the news and kind of getting too much statistics and maybe looking on social media too much and getting too stressed by a lot of the unknown and seeing a lot of stuff about different stats or different worries that other people are having and how that can affect them as well. So they can teach them some of those things about how to kind of regulate maybe like their news exposure, and they can also teach them coping skills as well.
So it's a teachable moment almost. So what are some other ways to help manage stress in children? So
one thing, like I had mentioned earlier, is routine. So if you're not having a schedule, you don't know what to expect. What's coming up next? How might this day look? What can I expect for this week or maybe this month? So helping to kind of get some sort of routine and schedule into your family's day, into your child's day, can be really helpful to give them some of that structure and kind of some boundaries so that they have a task to be working on. They have some outlets to be maybe working out some emotion through physical activity, getting outside regularly, seeing the sun, touching kind of sensory things, so digging in the dirt, playing with water, doing some bubbles. Some of the other things that parents can be teaching is maybe creating like a family mantra or kind of motto of I can do hard things, or when I get worried, and they can kind of decide on what that next part can be. I can do this thing. Maybe that's teaching them some intentional breathing to 5 slowly, in through your nose, out through your mouth, kind of working on some of those things. It's really easy to find some of that information on Pinterest and online, frankly. But just some of those simple everyday kind of strategies that can be incorporated throughout your day as well.
Right. Really good suggestion. So, as we know, children are out of school. So, how can a parent help normalize their lives?
So like I said, bring in that structure. If they don't have a TV playing in their classroom, then turn the TV off. Put a paper on it, just like my mom used to do sometimes in the summertime. Put a paper with a big old note on your TV that says no TV today or no TV until this time, just to kind of get that focus back on what they're supposed to be doing during their day. Maybe that creating a menu, a lunch menu for the week so that they know what's coming up next, especially if they can read. If they can read, then they can check out for themselves. Just go look at the calendar. And maybe they can bring some creativity into that too, of creating that routine as well of, well, I don't want to just run around the tree outside in the backyard. Maybe let's go for a really long bike ride one day, or let's go to a park that has stairs and go up and down them as much time as we can for that kind of recess or kind of PE time of the day too.
So I love that idea. No TV today sign hanging on the TV, or no TV until this time, and some good suggestions on what kids can do. So is there anything else, Grace, you would like to share on how parents can help manage their kids' stress through this time?
I would say that one thing that I've been hearing and seeing throughout all of this quarantine and COVID-19 kind of interesting time that we're living in right now is just the community that can come from sharing your own experience. So when parents reach out to another parent and they're like, oh my gosh, how are you doing today? It's going crazy over here. You can find a lot of comfort in that and knowing you're not the only one. So even though I mentioned having kind of that sign up on the TV of like, no TV right now, we're going to take a break from it, give yourself some grace in it too, really realizing that you're not the only one struggling to maybe create some of these boundaries, especially if they haven't been going from day one, because maybe we thought it was going to be a shorter time of quarantining in the beginning. So I would say give yourself some grace and reach out when you need it. Maybe you, as a family, you could come together with what those boundaries could be. Maybe it's kind of sticking with what you always do of getting chores done at a certain time, being outside at a certain time, kind of some rest times during the day or time reading books, things that will kind of really fill up your mind and your brain creatively, involving some kind of art as well, activity or kind of expression through kind of making a mess or having some fun and making a project through it. But I would just say give yourself some grace. At the end of the day, I think everyone is trying their best. And so while taking a break from the TV or screens can be good, it's also not always realistic because schools are doing online learning, distance learning, so it's not realistic to take a break from that screen all the time, because if that's their main modality of education at the time, then that's what we want to keep that there for and in place. So maybe that's taking rest times after they've done some of the Zoom calls, or maybe some of that learning of going into certain apps and getting their lessons done. But then they can kind of have some time for their brain to kind of switch gears, maybe express themselves creatively, like I said, but also to have some grace with your schedule and with your boundaries as well.
Right. Some really good ideas there and great advice. And we all could use some grace. No question about that. Well, Grace, thank you so much for your time. This has really been informative. We appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thank you.
That's Grace Wilhelm. And for more information, please visit dignityhealth.org/Bakersfield. And if you found this podcast helpful, please share it on your social channels and be sure to check out the full podcast library for topics of interest to you. This is Hello Healthy, a Dignity Health podcast. I'm Bill Klaproth. Thanks for listening.